Do you have to sort of encroach on perhaps some of the things that make a democratic world stand apart, some of the civil liberties, some of the protections on individual freedom of speech, freedom to act, freedom to hide under the banner of religious organizations? I mean, will you crack down here?
We will certainly look, as I think most countries will, at our own domestic laws and see how, in a sense, they measure up to the scale of the problem we now face. And I think we can proceed in a sensible way, which is to say people are perfectly entitled to express their views. And if people want to be anti-British or anti-American, we're Democrats. We believe that people have the right to express their views. But if they are engaged in organising terror or acts of terrorism, then we have got to act against that. And you're right, I think a lot of people will look at, for example, how terrorism is financed, how some of these people do shelter in our country, and not just our country, but other countries, democratic countries around the world. And if this evil of mass terrorism is as we say it is, then we have got to exercise the power and the vigilance to ensure that it's restrained and defeated. Now, I don't believe that that is to act in contradiction of our civil liberties. I believe it is in part pursuing the basic civil liberty that people have to go about their business free from terror.
Do you think there might be, I don't know, a system of identity cards or something similar to that?
Well, I think there are a whole series of things that people will look at in the wake of this. And I think this is the time, as it were, to set an objective and then to consider very carefully how we meet that objective.
Let's go back and talk about the alliance. How do you keep an alliance cohesive over what you've all described as a sustained, long and difficult campaign? It's going to take a long time, apparently, to do what you've described.
Well, of course, it's right in a sense that when we're merely offering words of support, that is, in a way, as I've been saying to people in the last few days, that's the easy part in one sense. I mean, the hard part starts when we actually take the action. But I think that support will be there, not just because of people's sense of horror and outrage at what has happened, but also because of their realization that unless we take action, then we are all at risk. And so it is right for reasons of justice, but it's also right for reasons of self-protection. I'm not saying there won't be difficulties along the way, there always are in these situations, but certainly so far as Britain is concerned, and I really do believe the vast bulk of the civilized world will stand with America.
Have you spoken to your Russian counterpart? Have you spoken to President Putin?
Yes, I have spoken to President Putin. Well, I think obviously you have to talk to President Putin about the specific things that the Russians will do to help in this situation, but I don't think you should be in any doubt that President Putin and the Russian people were utterly horrified by this. And of course, they themselves have suffered terrorist outrages in Russia too.
When we talk about the military component of any response, do you think NATO has obviously unprecedentedly given its full support to come to mutual defense of one of its members? Do you envision a classic NATO-style response, or how would you envision a military response?
I think there's a process that we need to get clear here. First of all, we identify those responsible. Then we work out the correct military response, and then we see the right way of putting that together. Now, I think we're too premature at this stage to start speculating on the exact nature of either the response or the way that we will pursue it. But obviously, as I say, there will be these two components to the action that we take. The more immediate action, if you like, to bring to account those responsible, and then over time, the systematic war upon the whole machinery of terrorism.
Do you think that the United States would take unilateral action, or do you expect that there will be, further consultations and sort of gathering of the coalition?
I think that the way that President Bush has handled this is absolutely right. I mean, he has been very calm and measured in the way that he has approached it. He has been in close consultation with allies. Obviously, America has got to defend itself against such an attack. And we will be there in support of America in doing that, and that is important. But it has been done in a way that I think reflects very great credit from the administration, because their determination is absolute, but their way of doing it, quite rightly, is to say, look, this is where we stand, this is why we stand in this position, and join us in it. And I think that that will, of itself, win a great deal of support. And as I say, not just amongst Western countries or countries that are traditional allies of the United States. I think they will get support for that position right across the world.
The President of the United States has talked about a fight between good and evil, and a lot has been made of a sort of a clash of civilizations, or a clash of fanatics against the civilized world. How do you see this clash, if there is one?
Well, I think those are two very separate things. The vast majority of Muslims are decent, law-abiding people, were absolutely appalled by this outrage, and will be fully supportive of us taking action against international terrorism. Indeed, many Muslims are victims of international terrorism. So in no sense should this be seen as, if you like, one part of the world against the Islamic world. It's not like that at all, and I think people understand that very, very clearly. But it is a war, if you like, between the civilized world and fanaticism. And whatever banner that fanaticism marches under, it is important that we recognize these are people who will stop at nothing. And therefore, however difficult it is for us, and however much we will regret the fact that we have to take this action because of the terrible thing that has happened, nonetheless, we have to do so. And this is a time for, for cool head, for calm nerves, and for an absolute and fixed determination to see this thing through. And we will see it through. It will be done.
On that note, thank you very much for joining us, Mr. Prime Minister.